We are 103b at the bottom, Mishnah at the bottom of the page. We continue to deal with people who are leasing fields as or borrowing them as sharecroppers or as tenant farmers. If you take a field from your friend, meaning a lease arrangement, and it's an irrigated field or a field with a tree, so these are improvements over an empty field, right? If it's irrigated already, that's a better field because it's easier to grow things, right? And if there's a tree in it, then the tree might produce fruits. Yave Shamayim V'Niksa, so you rented a premium property. Yave Shamayim V'Niksa Sila, and then the well dries, the spring dries up, or the tree falls down, and now it's just a regular field. So now the field isn't as good as the one that you rented, right? So do you get a discount? No, there's no discount on the price. Im amar lo aval im amar lo chacharli sedei beis hashlachin zu. But if the rental agreement was rent me this irrigated field, or stay beis ilan, or this field with a tree in it, then Yahweh Shabbai v'niksa ilan menakalo min chacharo. Then you do get a discount. You do get a rebate on the rental because it's not the field that you rented. It's not as good as you said specifically. I want this irrigated field, and now it's not irrigated anymore, so you get a discount. So Gemara wants to know a little more detail. Hey, what are we talking about here? If like there's a drought in the whole area, right? The river dried up, and that's why the downstream the irrigation channels were also dried up. Why don't you get a rebate? You can say this is like a general, this is a disaster zone. We've declared a state of emergency. And we'll see in the Mishnah coming up later that in that case, then the renter does have to offer a discount if there's like a general drought or a rebate, I should say. Amar of Papa. So what are we talking? So what is this Mishnah talking about? Amar of Papa, the Yavesh Nara Zuta. No, it's not a regional problem. It's just this one downstream channel, just this small area dried up, and then that's just the luck of the draw. There's no rebate. The Amarle, because the renter can say, like you rented the field, you want to grow things in the field, bring a bucket, right? But you can't say that if there's no water in the whole area. Okay, Amar of Papa. So these first two Mishnahs that we just had in this parak, they apply whether we're talking about a sharecropper or a tenant farmer. But the Mishnah is coming up for the rest of the parak. The rules that apply, that we're going to discuss, that apply to sharecropping, don't apply to tenant farming, and vice versa as well, as we'll see. Someone says, lease me as a tenant farmer this irrigated field. So we'll put that aside, the idea of what's coming up in the following Mishnayos, because now we're still dealing with our Mishnah for the next half of the Amud, which applies to both. And the Mishnah said, the Mishnah says, if I said rent me this irrigated field and then it dries up, then I have to give you a rebate. But why? Maybe the renter can say to the tenant or the sharecropper, he can say, you know what? When I said this irrigated field, Beis Hashlachin, I didn't mean it's an irrigated field. That's the name of the field. This field is named Beis Hashlachin. Okay, that seems really weird to me. Maybe we can construct a case that sounds a little more reasonable in a more modern or more contemporary idiom. But the Gemara is questioning, like, maybe that's not a condition of the rental. It's just the name of the field, and he misunderstood that when he called it Beis Hashlachin, the tenant thinks I'm getting an irrigated field, but the owner intends, no, I'm giving you this field that's named based on shlachim. And where do we get support for this? Milo Tanya, then we have a brisa. Omer l'chavero, base koran afar ani mocher lecha. I'm selling you a base core, which is an area of area, a measure of area. I'm selling you a base core of dirt. Afal pi she'ein lo ella lesach, even if it's only half of a base car, a lesach, which is a little used measure, but it's half of a base car. So higio, it's then he gets it. It's that sale is valid. Shalom archalo elishma, because when he called it base car, didn't mean that it actually measures a base car. He meant this field is called the base car field. Vahu de Miskure base car. That's only if it's the case, if people call that. This is like the shir I was listening to called it like, Happy Times Ranch, right? Well, what if you go to the Happy Times Ranch and you don't have a good time? So can you say you sold me a happy time and I didn't get it? No, the name of the place is Happy Times Ranch. Similarly, Karmani Mochalach, if you say I'm selling you a vineyard, even though there's no vines, no grapes in it, Higio, it works. Because it's called a karam, it's called the vineyard, even though there's no grapes growing there. Karma, if that's the case, if the name of that place is vineyard. Similarly, pardes, ani marchalach, if I sell you an orchard, even if there's no fruit in it, the sale stands, because it's called the pomegranate or the orchard. Not because it has fruit, because that's its name. That's only if it's the case, if it's called the orchard. So Alma, Amrle Shma Ba'alma Amrle. So you see that you can say Shma Ba'alma Amrilach. So in our case, also, like, why does the Mishnah say that if it's not an actual base on shlachin, if it's not an irrigated field, why don't you just say that maybe that's the name of it? So maybe we can say that here too in the Mishnah. Depends who's using the words here. If the seller or the renter, I guess the owner uses the word, if the owner uses the word, then like he calls it by his name, right? But if the renter, the guy who's renting it, says he calls it a Beis Shlachim, he doesn't care what the name is. If he says it's an irrigated, if he calls it the irrigated field, it's in his interest. Like he must be saying. We assume that he's saying, I'm renting from you a field that is irrigated. So that would be that's a distinction we can make in the Mishnah. So here the Gemara says, if the owner says it, Shma Ba'al Marmalay, he could be just referring to the name. But if the guy who's renting it says it, Kpeda, because he wants, we can assume it's not, he doesn't care about the name, he cares about the fact that it's irrigated, and so that is a valid condition of the rental. Ravina Amar.
I'm reminded. I'm reminded of Silver Spring, Maryland. There
Yeah.
actually is a spring there. It has been dry for a very, very long time.
Oh yeah, but it's still called Silver Spring.
It's still called, the place is called Silver Spring.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, let's see. I mean, my street is named Alderbrook Road, right? It does have a
Uh-huh.
brook on it called the Alderbrook. But should that brook dry up, the name of the street is still going to be Alderbrook Road. So a similar
Same
thing.
idea. Yes.
Ravina Amar. Ravina says you don't have to make that distinction. In the case of our Mishnah, since he says that this irrigated field, so they're standing in the field. Based on shlachin lamalei, so then you don't have to name it, right? You could just say this field, right? What would be the point of giving the name? The fact that he said based on shlachin zeh means he's specifying that it's this irrigated field, that's a condition of the rental. He's saying that I'm renting you this field, which is, as it is now, irrigated. Okay, next mission. You lease a field and you leave it alone. You don't farm it. So now this mission, as will be obvious, is talking about a sharecropper. Shamin osa kama ruyalasa. So you rent the field. You say, I'm going to give you a third of the crops as the rent, and then there are no crops because you didn't farm it. So showing us the kamaruya lasa. So we evaluate. That's not fair to the guy who rented it out. He could have done the work himself and grown some crops. So we evaluate how much should it have produced, and also he has to give him a percentage of that. Shekach positive low im over velo avid, because that's what's in the contract. Im over velo avid. If I leave it alone and don't work it properly, ashlim b'meitva, I'll pay with the best kind of payment. So the Gemara takes this further.
What's he paying with then? If he didn't work it, what does he pay with?
Sorry?
If he doesn't work the field, the sharecropper, what does he pay? Does he pay value money? Does he have to buy crops from somebody else that would be equivalent to crops that he could have grown?
I assume he could pay cash, whatever the value is. So Rameir Dorish Moshe Hadyat. Rabbi Meir would Dorish is interesting word here. I'm not quite sure how to translate it, but it'll become clear what it means. He would give valence to what a common person would write in a contract. So in other words, there's like standard contracts, which your lawyer will, write out for you, and they'll use all the right terminology to protect you and so on. But I could go and write a contract myself and use, like English, right? So if I write a contract like that, Reb Meir says that counts. We'll see what he means. Tanya. Reb Meir Omer. Im over velo avid ashalim b'meitva. Our Mishnah says if I leave the field fallow and I don't work it, I will pay b'meitva with the best kind of property. So now this is not a standard contract, but if this is what people write, then they're bound by it. You have to, like, this isn't a standard clause in the contract, but if someone writes this contract, a layperson writes this contract, then you have to abide by it. Rabbi Yehuda had the same idea to Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda Adam maybe carbon ashir al ishto. Let's say you're a wealthy person, and your wife commits some kind of transgression for which she has to bring a carbon olivia, right? A carbon that what kind of animal you bring, how expensive it is determined by your economic status. So this is a rich guy, but his wife, he's like, she doesn't really own anything, right? Everything she owns is his. I mean, she may have brought in dowry and so on, but let's say she didn't. Let's say she doesn't have anything of her own. So the rich guy can say, I'm rich, but my wife is not rich. Let her pay bring the poor person's sacrifice. He has to bring, for every kind of carbon, he has to provide according to his status. Because that's what's written in her ksuba. The achrayus to islach alai min kadmas dina. He takes upon himself in the ksuba obligations that whatever obligations you have, they're on me. Even from before, even those that are pre-existing. So this is not part of the standard ksuba, but people would put this in, and therefore they're bound by it. I mean, I don't even see the counter argument. Like, why would you say that you're not bound by it? I'm not sure I see the counter argument. I mean, maybe it's because there is a standard that was established by the Chachamim, and you should go by that. I don't know, but we'll see a counter example coming up. Hillel had the same idea, the Tanya. Anshe Alexandria having Makashins and the Shoseim, Ubashas Knisastan Lachupa by Lacharim V'Chokin Asamayan. It happened in Alexandria. People would, getting married, there's two parts, there's Kedushin and Nisuin, right? Once you're Mekadesh a woman, once a man is Mekadesh a woman, she can no longer marry anybody else, right? That would be adultery. So in Alexandria, what happened was a person would be Mekadesh a woman, bring her to the chuppah, and then somebody else would leap in and do the nisuin himself, right? Now, what happens in that case? Any child from that kind of union would be a mamzer, right? Because once person A did the kiddushin on this woman, if somebody else does the nisuin, it's not effective, right? And furthermore, if he has a child with her, the second person, that child is a mamzer. So pretty strange case that like it sounds like this was a common thing. So not sure what that's about.
Kedushin and Nisuin were generally about a year apart then.
Right, right. So, but it's pretty strange that it makes it sound like this was a common practice, which is weird. So the rabbis wanted to say children from this kind of marriage are mamzerim. Hillel said, before we declare you a mamzer, let's see what the ksuba says. They brought the ksuba, that the kiddushin, the ksuba that was recorded, the kiddushin said that this kedushin will be effective once I do the nisuin, right? So if person A never did the nisuin, the kedushin never was effective, and so the person B who came along and did the nisuin, he's not encroaching on an existing kiddushin, and so the children were not mamzerim. So as a result, they didn't. They didn't make them mamzerim. So this is obviously not a common clause in the ketubah, but if people wrote it in, so Hillel's saying it's valid. It's a valid clause. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Yadar Shlosh Hedya. Here's another example of Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. The Tanya Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer. Amalvas Chavero lo yimashkenenu yoser mechava. If you lend somebody $100 and you take security for it, don't take something that's worth $200. Shekach koselo, because this is what's written. Tashlumta deisla chalai. Kol kabel dichi. The right of repayment that you have on me the borrower, are equal to the value of the mashkon, of the collateral, right? So that's why you shouldn't use something that's worth more, because the contract indicates that the loan is the same value as the collateral, but it's not the case. The loan is less. So, therefore, if you're writing this contract, don't make sure that the collateral is equal to the amount of the loan. And Tama the So Gemara says the reason is because it's written that way. If he hadn't written that clause into the contract, then it wouldn't be, you wouldn't be entitled to the $200 collateral. But wait a minute, we have a question on this. Rabbi Yochanan says, Mishkano, if you took security, collateral, and then you return the collateral to him. So, the Torah says, like, if you take his night clothes, you got to give it back to him at night, right? And then take it again in the morning. Let's say you gave it back to him, and then the lender dies during the night, right? So the collateral is now in the hands of the borrower. Sham Tome al Gabe Banav. The borrower is the one who died, right? So the borrower died. So now the heirs of the borrower are in control of this collateral. So you can repossess it, right? The lender can repossess it. So it looks like the lender, has a greater advantage with the collateral even without the document, right? So, like, why are we picking this on the document? So
but he gave him back. Didn't you say he gave him back his clothes or his day clothes already? He gave him back the collateral.
Gave him back the collateral, right? But now the borrower dies, right? And the the way it goes is the lender should get the collateral back until the loan is paid, right? and that's what we're saying, that yes, you can collect it, but first we wanted to say it's because that's the way it's written in the contract. But the second statement, the statement by Rav Yochanan, indicates there's nothing to do with what's written in the contract. That's the advantage of the borrower, of the lender, that the law is, regardless of what's written in the contract, regardless of whether it's specified in the contract, the borrower has the right to repossess the security, the collateral, until the loan is paid.
The lender, not the borrower.
Yes, right. Sorry. Thank you. The lender has the right to repossess the collateral until the loan is paid. So like, this is not therefore a proof that it's because of what's written in the contract, right? We were trying to say this is another example of the way something's written in a contract by a layperson is effective. But it turns out that even if it's not written in the contract, it's the same rule. The answer is writing writing it in the document protects the lender if the collateral has lost value, so now it's worth less than the loan. So writing that into the contract protects the lender that he can still get his full loan paid, rather than just accepting the now depreciated item as payment for the loan. If he wrote it that way in the document, then he can still get paid in full for the loan. Okay, now Rabbi Yossi Adar Shloshon Hedya, we have another example.
Well, he's just claiming the collateral, so that's worth less than that. How does that guarantee gets paid the full value of the loan, the money that he lent?
Yeah, by writing that clause in the document, that protects the full value of the loan, even if the collateral is no longer worth. So without the contract, you would say, okay, here's the collateral. You keep the collateral. It's only worth half what the loan was. Your problem, right? You keep the collateral, and we're done. We're square. But if you write into the contract, if a hedyot writes into the contract that you still get paid back the full loan, then you still get paid back the full loan. So it's another example of how the layperson's writing in the contract is binding. Rabbi Yossi Adar Shloshon Hedya. Rabbi Yossi has another example. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Makom Shel Golasos Ksuva Milva, in a place where the custom is to make the dowry, right, written into the ksuba, to make that a loan. So in other words, that should the wife should the marriage end either through death or divorce, then the husband has to return the dowry as repayment of a loan. So if they write that into ksuba, which is obviously non-standard, gova milva, then the husband can collect it as a loan. He's entitled to what's written in the ksuba. Lichbal, but if the custom of the place is to double the value in the contract. So let's say, the typical dowry would be $100, but you write in $200, then go for Metzia. Then you're only entitled to the $100. Yeah, then he can only collect what. So again, it's an example of whatever is written. So why only half? Because the custom of the place is assumed to be like not to be taken seriously. In other words, they would write double the amount to make everybody look better, right? This person can only afford the $100. We're going to write $200 so so the father-in-law can hold his head up high at the bar or whatever. He looks magnanimous, even though everybody understands that it's really only half of really what people pay is only half. So in that case, it's that would be the local custom.
And the Gemara says in Ketubah that they would write Tosefet Ketubah, right? They would have from 400, 500, 800, whatever.
right?
But wasn't he then obligated? He was she.
Yeah. So this is talking about a place where it is known that the custom is, everybody knows you're only obligating yourself to 100. We're writing 200 in the ketubah as an exaggeration to make everybody look good and feel good. Okay, but everybody knows that. But what you're talking about, the Tosefik Ksuba, those conditions presumably don't apply. It's not the custom to write in double the amount. The custom is that whatever you write in, that's what you're obligated to in our, like, in the typical place. So in the typical place, whatever you write in is what you mean, right? You say what you mean and you mean what you say. That's the typical custom. There are places that Gemara is saying where it's not the case that what you write what you mean. You write double what you mean. And so in that case, if you're in that kind of place, then everybody understands what the real deal is. And Nahar Balai Gavu Tilta, and there was a place called Nahar Balai or Nahar Bala where they would triple the amount written in the ksuba, and everybody understood they're only obligating themselves to 1/3 of that tripled amount. Now Meremar Magbe Name Shvacha. Now Meremar would insist on following what was written in the contract. The inflated amount, he would say, is collectible. So Ravina says to him, Batanya, we have a Mishnah, Lichpal Govamach. So the Mishnah just says, you're not right. Where there's Lokasha, not a problem. If there's an act of kinyan, then you have to take it seriously. But if there's no act of kinyan, it's just written in the ketubah, everyone understands that it's an exaggeration and you're not obligated. Ravina Mashbach Vakasiv Libarte. Ravina, in the case of his own daughter's ksuba, he wrote the larger amount, the double. Amalei, so the Chassan says, nicknaming Neidmar, let's make a kinyan on this tuba. That would be nice. Amarlahu, he said, Imikna lo michpal, imichpal lo mikna. Ha, he says, nothing doing. If we're going to do a kinyan, we're going to rewrite this so that only the actual amount is written in there. If we're not doing a kinyan, we can leave it as it is. So he understood what he was doing and he stood by his guns. There was a guy that he said to people, give 400 zuz in the ketubah for my daughter. And apparently this was a place where the doubling rule was in effect. So Ravacha sent this message. Does that mean he actually obligated himself to 400, so we should write 800 in the ketubah? Or did he mean write in 400 because I really only want to give 200? Right? What did he mean by saying write to 400? Give 400. Ravashi says, Chazina, let's look. If the language he says was give to her, so he meant give 400, write in 800. But if he says write in 400, then he meant really 200, write in 400, which is kind of obvious. Some say the version was like this. Chazina, we have to see. If the emphasis, or what we have to see exactly what his language was when if he said for her ktuba, then it's arba mea din and tani mea. And when I say 400, I mean 800. In other words, when I say for her ktuba, I mean I want it to be 400. So write in 800, which is double, but really it's 400. But if he says write in the ketubah, give her 400 in the ketubah, then he means in the document, right? Then it's arba mea zuzedin and masa, means you write in 400, which means I really only wanted to give 200. But we're not going to accept the Ravashi's distinction. It doesn't matter what he said. Arba mea zuzedin and masa. We're always going to say, if he says give $400, he means write $400. I only mean 200, to give 200. Ad diamar havula stama, until he says give her $400. If he doesn't mention the ketubah, then he means I really want to give her $400. So you could write 800 in the ketubah. But if he mentions the word ketubah in his statement, then he means write 400 in the ketubah. I only want to give her 200.
So is this sort of standard contract in that area that he would be obligated
this
half of
all
whatever he
applies.
writes? That they half whatever he writes? Is that what
Yes, this all applies only in such a place where everyone understands that we're going to double the actual amount to write in the ksuba.
Double the actual amount that he's going, that he would be obligated to give.
Right.
That's rather strange, though.
Yeah, it is pretty strange. I mean, I would be very hesitant to write in a contract to give twice as much as I really want to give. Right. But if that's the custom for all ketubas in town, so you'd go along with that. But it is kind of strange. Agree with you on that. Oh, Gavra, there's another case. The Kabil Ara Mechavre. Somebody rented the field. Amar ima varna la yahivna lach alfa zuze. If, and he says as a condition, you know what? I know you don't think I'm much of a farmer. If I don't do the farming, I'll pay you $1,000. Over Tilta, and what he did was he farmed 2/3 of the land and left 1/3 unfarmed. Right. So what's the deal? Does he have to provide compensation? A third of the compensation, or does like a third of $1,000, or do we say that he didn't leave the whole field fallow, therefore the condition is null and void? Ari Nardai, and they said Nardadinahu. The law is the Yaivle Tlasmeo Tlasnu Tilsite. He has to give him $333 and 33 cents because he left a third of the land unfarmed. Rava Amar. Rava says, no, asmachta hiv asmachta lokanya. This is an asmachta, meaning it's a condition that is not expected to be followed. And so we don't obligate him to pay. So Larava, so according to that, how is this different than the following Mishnah? Our Mishnah, if I leave it unfarmed and I don't work it, I'll pay with the best possible payment. So we see that it's not a smachta. Like our Mishnah says that you have to follow that. Where the answer is Hasam lo kogazim. In our Mishnah, there's not like an exaggeration, right? The exaggeration of if I don't farm this, I'll pay you $1,000, right? That's obviously an exaggeration, and I'm not. It's not considered binding because we understand we believe that everybody understands that I'm just exaggerating, but I'm not really going to pay you $1,000, right? But in our Mishnah, since you said something. So in our Mishnah, there's no exaggeration. And here, because there's a big exaggeration, so we understand that it's just an exaggeration, and we don't hold the person to the condition. However, the Kabil Ara somebody rented some land and with the intention to plant sesame. So sesame was apparently a valuable crop, more valuable than wheat. And Zarachite, and then he went and actually planted wheat. Of the chiti kashumshme, and what happened was wheat was very expensive that year, and so there was enough wheat grown. So the wheat that grew was actually equal in value to sesame, right? So on the one hand, and the other thing about sesame is that it's more valuable, but apparently it depletes the resources of the land, like it depletes the power of the land to grow, right? It takes out minerals or whatever. Now, this guy grew wheat. He ended up with the same value, right? And he didn't deplete the land as much, right? So now is the sharecropper entitled to a discount, right? Because he's giving back better than was expected. The land is in better shape than it was expected to be, because of he planted wheat instead of sesame. So maybe he should get a discount or rebate. Several Rav Kana wanted to say that you get a rebate according to what the difference in what the land is worth now because it only grew wheat versus what it would have been worth if you grew sesame, which is less. Amar Ravashi Rav Kana, Ravashi says not so fast. Amri, people say Kach Sha'ara v'lo lichos shmara. Like, I'd rather have the profits, right? I'd rather have cash. I don't want to. I never agreed to pay you for giving me land that's in better condition than I expected. That's very nice, but it's not worth money to me. Like, I'd rather have the money in my pocket than the more valuable land. So you can't make me pay for something that we didn't contract on. How governed the Kabul
But the wheat is the wheat that he did produce is the same value as the sesame that he didn't produce, though.
Right. So the fact that he pays him 25% of the crop, and there's no issue there because 25% of wheat is 25% of sesame turns out to be the same in this case. Right. So the sharecropping fee, there's no dispute over that. Right. Nobody's getting cheated of anything. Right. You're getting 25% of $1,000 either way. Right. The wheat was worth $1,000, so you get $250. If it had been sesame, it would have been worth $1,000, so you get $250. So the sharecropping fee, no one's arguing about. The question is, should there be a rebate because I gave you back land that's stronger because I only grew wheat, I didn't grow sesame? And the answer is no, I'm not paying for that. That's very nice that you did that, but I never agreed to pay for cash for getting back land that's in better shape. However, there was somebody who, same kind of case, he rented land to grow sesame. He grew wheat. Now, the wheat turned out to be more valuable. It's worth $2,000, right? So 25% of that is more than I expected to pay. So several of Ravina Lamemar. So what do you do? Does he only have to pay 25% of what the sesame would have been worth, which is what he rented the land ostensibly to plant sesame, so he should only pay $250. Or since he actually grew wheat and he's supposed to pay 25%, he has to pay $500, which is 25% of the value of the wheat. Several Ravina wanted to say, you split the difference. Did the Arlo Ashbacha? Was it the farmer that brought all the gain and not wasn't some of the gain that the land was more productive? So therefore, the landowner doesn't have to give him any greater share. Okay, Nardai. They said in Narda, Hi Iska. This Palga milva upalga pikanon. If you have an iska business deal where you specify that half is a loan and half is a deposit, all right? Avud rabbanon milsa denichale lelova, venichale lemalka. The rabbis made a clause in there that is good for both the lender and the borrower. So no, sorry. So it's not that the iska is. So iska is the way to get around rebus, right? Around interest. So the rabbi said that this kind of iska should be considered half a loan and half a business venture, half a deposit, right? An investment. So that way, you can avoid interest, but you also mitigate the risk because at least, if the whole investment goes belly up, at least half of it has to be paid back. Now that if you're going to accept that, if you want to sell that half and drink it away, as it were, just drink beer with the money and not use it as an investment. Shopper the part of the loan, the part of it that's a loan, you can do what you want with it. If you decide not to invest the money, not to work with it, and just consume with it instead, you're entitled to do that. Bava says, Lahachi Karle Iska. You know why it's called Iska Diamarle? Because the investor, the guy who provides the funds, can say to the borrower, the manager, Ki avinolach, when I gave it to you, li I gave it to you for a purpose, right? To invest it, right? Not not to go and waste it and to spend it. So Rava disagrees. Amar Ravidi Baravin V'imei. So Ravidi says if the manager dies, Nasa Metaltalin Eitzel Banav, then the loan part of the merchandise becomes like it becomes like metaltalin, and it can't be collected from the estate, um, unlike secured property. Rava Amar, but Rava says lahachikar liska. You know why it's called an iska? Dimes. If the managing partner dies, liyasim metaltalin etzilbanav, so that it should not become metaltalin, right? So we're kind of disagreeing about the nature of the word or the nature of what we expect from the parties. Okay, we'll stop here for today, and pick it up. David will pick it up tomorrow. I'm not sure what the schedule is for Yantiv, but check your WhatsApp or email, I guess. So
Thank you.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
Thank you, Chag Sameach.
All right.
Today is the 49th day of the Omer.
Oh, I did it. I counted all 49. Both me and my wife. We toasted ourselves last night.
Yeah,
Chag
I felt like I should have said Shehekianu.
That's right. There's a discussion about why you don't say Shafi. I don't know. I don't remember the details.
Yeah.
Okay, Chag Sameach, everybody.